Call the meeting to order. If everyone could please rise for the Lord's Prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. The Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Councilor Caulfield.
Here.
Councilor Donahue.
Here.
Councilor Elliott. Mayor Martin.
Here.
Councilor Armand Mercia.
Here.
Councilor Rita Mercia.
Here.
Councilor Milanazzo.
Here.
Councilor Ramirez.
Here.
Councilor Broderick.
Here.
8 present, 1 absent.
Chair recognizes Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm requesting for my colleagues a moment of silence with darkened chambers for 2 outstanding citizens of our city. First, for Edward Gregoire, a devoted and loving husband, father, grandfather. Mr. Gregoire was a dedicated employee of the Lowell School Department. He also served his country with pride and distinction in the United States Navy. And Leo Perrault, a devoted and loving husband, father, grandfather, served his country with pride and distinction in the United States Navy during the Second World War in the Pacific at Iwo Jima. On returning after the war, he was an advocate for workers' rights and good working conditions in the shoe industry. Mr. Perrault was past president and co-founder of the Retired Adults Recreational Association on High Street in Lowell, which is still functioning very well to this day. May both these men rest in peace.
Thank you. May they rest in peace. Councilor Donahue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to take an opportunity to introduce a member of our audience, Mr. Christopher Stasio, who is in attendance tonight. If you'd stand, Christopher. Christopher is a senior at the Greater Lowell Technical High School, and he's one of his, he's here to get communications and citizenship badges from the Boy Scouts, and he must sit through our entire council meeting. So welcome, Christopher, and good work. So I just wanted to introduce him to the council. Thank you.
Earn you 2 badges.
Yeah. Very smart approach to get 2 badges out with 1 meeting. I have both of those badges. I wasn't that smart to do it that way. Okay, before we begin the formal agenda, there is one presentation. I want to present a proclamation in connection with National Mentoring Month. Bear with me while I read through it quickly. Approximately 17,000 youth in Massachusetts have mentors in the context of a formal mentoring program. 119,000 young people in Massachusetts live before the poverty level, 223,000 live in single-parent households, and 340,000 face risk factors of poverty, school dropout, and abuse or neglect. And whereas research studies have found that youth involved in mentoring programs are 46% less likely to start using drugs, 32% less likely to skip school, 33% less likely to engage in violence, and more trusting of parents and less likely to lie to them, whereas the YWCA of Lowell manages a mentoring program for teens called the Project STEP Mentoring Partnership with support from the Career Center of Lowell, the Massachusetts Service Alliance, and the Massachusetts Department of Social Services, and is constantly recruiting caring adults to serve as mentors and fill the gap between youth needing a mentor and youth having a mentor. Now, therefore, I, William F. Martin, Jr., Mayor of the City of Lowell, Massachusetts, do hereby proclaim January 2007 as National Mentoring Month and urge all caring adults to commit to mentoring a child in need, given this 30th day of January 2007 by me, the Mayor. And I'd ask Andy Chandonnet from the YWCA to come forward, accept the proclamation, and tell us a little bit about the mentoring program and Mentoring Month.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Manager, members of the public in attendance here, and also anybody that might be viewing from home. Thank you for issuing this proclamation and for giving me the opportunity to speak before you tonight on behalf of the YWCA of Lowell and National Mentoring Month. Throughout Massachusetts and throughout the nation, official government bodies and a variety of programs and organizations have joined together through the National Mentoring Partnership to dedicate January as National Mentoring Month and to put out the call that there is a desperate need for caring adults to rise to the challenge of offering a listening ear, a compassionate word of hope and encouragement, a vote of confidence, an example of true friendship to the many young people that need a mentor. I ask each of you to consider this question: who mentored you? When Oprah Winfrey was asked this question, she replied, Mrs. Duncan, her fourth grade teacher. When Gloria Estefan was asked the question, she replied, my grandmother, Consuelo Garcia. And for any of you that are TV buffs, in one of the episodes of West Wing, U.S. President Josiah Bartlett spoke fondly of Mrs. Landingham as his mentor. When I asked myself this question, a flood of fond memories came to mind. Certainly my parents have been wonderful mentors. One thing that they taught me early on was to volunteer. They taught me this through their own example, being involved in the church and other community groups. But there were many other people outside my family that were also my mentors. Al Cody, my Little League coach. I learned good sportsmanship and perseverance from him. It seemed like I was always pitching against the toughest teams and the best pitcher, and I didn't always win. And I didn't like that. But I was supported by my coach and learned how to deal with those feelings. In high school, it was Mr. and Mrs. Fontaine and Mr. and Mrs. Harvey. They were volunteer advisors to the church youth group that I belonged to. They had a wonderful tolerance for the crazy things that teens often get involved with, and yet a friendly and persuasive way of keeping us from straying too far off the track. I thank them for never losing faith in my ability to be a leader in that particular group. Then there was Fred Spironis, my college advisor and favorite sociology professor. He was always available when I was uncertain about what direction I should take. I thank him for his passionate classroom lectures on social justice and for having such a significant influence on the career path that I chose. So I ask again, who mentored you? In Massachusetts alone, there are over 4,000 youth on agency waiting lists, hungry for the opportunity to be matched with a mentor. With referrals and support from the Mass Service Alliance, the Career Center of Lowell, and Department of Social Services, the YWCA matches teens with caring adult mentors in mentorship, internship, workplace settings. Just to name a few, Punta Cruz, a local TV show personality, Colette Peterson, a visiting nurse, Mike Paglia, the mayor's assistant, Christine Dunlap, another radio host. Ordinary people, yet really, truly extraordinary people. These are just some of the adults that have stepped up to the plate to mentor one or more of our teens. I'd like to publicly acknowledge them and thank them for their dedication and commitment. Likewise, I would like to acknowledge that our Project Step Mentoring Partnership Program has a waiting list as well, one that grows by the week. We need your help. The commitment, 2 hours per week for at least 8 months. In return, a meaningful relationship that may evolve into a lifetime friendship. If you're ready to take the challenge, I'm waiting for your phone call. You can call me at the YWCA, 978-454-5405, extension 117. I have a couple of handouts that I'd like to give to the council and to the manager. One is a postcard that asks, who mentored you? And the other is a thank you. So once you've answered that question of who mentored you, you might want to send them a thank you. and let them know that you appreciate what they've done for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy. Thanks for your continuing work in this important program. Thanks to everyone else at the YWCA as well. Okay, moving to the agenda, the first item, approval of the minutes of the January 23rd meeting. There's a motion to approve the minutes by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Ramirez. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The minutes are accepted. Under communications from the city manager, responses to council motions and requests, there are a number of items in the packet. Any questions or comments? Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, thank you for furnishing me and my colleagues with this report about the Army Corps of Engineers. And reading the report, it indicated that the Army Corps of Engineers is more or less putting everything on hold until we address the pump station on West Street, the vegetation. Vegetation we could certainly address easily, but the pump station on West Street is going to be quite expensive, I imagine. And
Councilor,
Mr. Manager.
there are actually two issues that we're working on simultaneously. We're looking at as you know, we had the Corps of Engineers out here in September.
Right.
At your request, I contacted them through Congressman Meehan's office and had them come out to walk the area that it was flooded. And then we went up and looked at some additional sites in the city that experienced some flooding back during the spring. And we're still pursuing having them do some work for us in terms of studying the area and coming up with a plan that could address some of the issues that we had with the flooding. Simultaneous to that, and they do actually connect, when they came that day, they handed me a letter that was sent to the city back in the fall of 2005, in which they put the city on notice that our responsibilities, or the city's responsibilities, were not being met in terms of maintaining the area that was part of their project back in the 1940s. Specific to that was the vegetation that you've spoken of and the pump station, getting that back online. And I think it's been offline now for about 20 years.
Yes, right.
So we've been moving forward to get that work done to comply with the Corps of Engineers requirements. We have the bidding, we have the vegetation clearing out to bid right now. That is, I believe that's out next, bid should be due next week or 2 weeks from now. We will then be able to move forward with that particular part of the project. The pump station is a bigger issue for us because it is a very expensive project.
Yes.
And we're not sure that it actually needs to be the same size that it was designed back in the 1940s, because there have been some changes in the city since then. So we're working to bring an engineering firm on that can help us figure that out and then move from there. So those are the two directions we're heading. We're complying with what the Corps wants. At the same time, we're continuing to push forward to have the Corps do the work that we brought them out for in the fall. The only other change, though, that's taken place since that time is that FEMA and the Corps of Engineers
Right.
have put a number of communities on notice across the country that there has to be maintenance of these projects that were built some time ago. If, in fact, that maintenance has not taken place, they are reserving the right to pull the community out of the flood insurance program.
Right.
So that was reported in the news
Right.
yesterday. There's more and more stories coming out on that. Lowell is one of the affected communities. We have asked for an extension to get the work done, but we're trying to expedite that as quickly as possible.
I just want to be assured that the Army Corps of Engineers weren't going to abandon us because we weren't addressing, the pump station is very expensive and costly. And naturally, we're going to address it, but I think the people want some answers, what could be done, not in a Band-Aid approach, but what could be done to prevent another flood such as we had last May.
Councilor, I think that, as I say, we're working a very complex issue here because these problems of the failure of the city to take the corrective action on those, on the vegetation and on that pump station, go back about 15 years. And so I'm not sure if I can make a commitment to you tonight that the Corps is not going to abandon us. I'd be more concerned that the FEMA is, because of the situation that they ran into in New Orleans, they are being very firm in terms of making sure that local governments do what they're supposed to do in terms of maintaining the levees and the other improvements that they've made. And I agree, it's a very expensive proposition to do that pump station, but we're continuing to work with Congressman Meehan's office to get some relief, to get the necessary extensions so that no one abandons the city with regards to the flood protection or the Corps coming in and doing the study or the additional work.
You know, Mr. Manager, it's sad because the people in New Orleans begged the federal government to improve the levees in New Orleans, and I think President Bush pulled the budgeting right out from underneath them on those levees. So they're talking out of both sides of their mouth. FEMA was saying if we don't maintain what we have, well, the people in New Orleans wanted the federal government to address those levees, and they ignored them. And you can see what happened there. So thank you for this report. Thank you.
Councilor Broderick, are you on this issue?
No, different issue.
All right, Councilor Donahue.
Yeah, just quickly, there was a story in today's Globe about 4 or 5 dams across the state that are substandard, I guess, according to the inspectors, and Lowell was one of them. I know the Chickaree's mayor was quoted in this story saying that, you know, it's unfair for the Army Corps of Engineers to be demanding this, that, and the other thing and not giving any resources, and that it would be extraordinarily expensive and so forth. I guess my concern, so it raised a question in my mind. I know Mr. McCarthy was quoted in the story that we're attempting to do what we've been told to do. But my question was, you know, number one, where does that put us in terms of the federal government? You've answered that. My other question is, as I read the story, are they saying that if it were a catastrophic hurricane like Katrina, that the dam may fail? Is that what the Army Corps of Engineers was saying when they picked these 5 dams across the state as being insufficient?
I think that they're saying that that they made investments over the years in a number of communities, and part of the investment included certain commitments by local government, and local governments in some cases have not lived up to their side of the commitment. And in case anything happens, they just want to be on the record.
They want to cover their own
right, exactly.
situation. But I'm more concerned about, you know, the city of Lowell and making sure that we're safe. And, you know, and so what? They made an investment in 1940. You know, there's a lot of years in between. And particularly in light of Katrina, it seems to me that the federal government should be all the more concerned about preventing, you know, a catastrophe rather than covering their tails so they don't have to pay for a catastrophe. That's just ridiculous. So, I mean, that's how I read the story. Maybe that's not fair, but I think it's an important issue, and I think particularly in you know, in context with the dam, we really better make sure that, you know, if we can get funds or at least make it clear, you know, that you know, we certainly want their continued cooperation and protection.
And I've had discussions with the colonel from the Army Corps of Engineers recently, and the Corps seems supportive and understanding of where we are. It's more, I think, issues that are coming from FEMA because they're the ones that provide the insurance protection and
right. But not to get off on a tangent, but you know, that water is coming from New Hampshire and through every town, and if that dam were to break, you know, it's a federal issue. It truly is a federal issue, and it should be a federal responsibility to cure it.
Right. Well, we're actually talking the levee that runs along the brook.
Right. Well, I know that,
And-
that part. I was
right.
just referring to the story that talked about the dams in the
Right.
story today. I think there were 5 that
Okay.
they talked about
Right.
in the
So we're,
Globe.
we're continuing to stay in touch with the Corps and as I said, the Congressman's office, and to ensure that the city is protected. And I think once we figure out how important that pump station is and what can be done with that, their argument is that the pump station is essential to make their system work. And if the pump station isn't working, then their system can't work as they designed it 60 years ago. So we need to, and it may be that we need some federal help to fix that pump station.
Right.
But that's what we need to do, to stay on top of it in that way.
At least 4 or 5 cities are affected, so.
Right.
Counselor, it is a pretty disappointing response, particularly from FEMA. The Army Corps people that were here, met with us, were very sympathetic. And in fact, we've had a pretty good test. In Lowell's case, it's really not a dam, it's the levee system, which in most places is the VFW highway, and it's stood up pretty well in the last flood for what that was designed for. Now, there are other parts of the city that weren't designed for the flood, and we had serious problems there, but at least there, we've had a pretty good test that it still worked, despite the deficiencies that they're imposing on us, or bringing to light. And yet, we look for some more help, and we're instead being told the complete opposite, that you need to help us, in essence. The typical federal government response, which is, it's your problem, we don't have any money, but go ahead and fix it anyway. So the managers and Mr. McCarthy both been on top of this issue, and we do have some cooperation from the Army Corps. I would say not as much from FEMA, certainly. So, Councilor Broderick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a question on the communication from Mr. Moses to on the auditorium improvement account. It looks, I read it a couple times, looks like there was a transfer in '03 of $300,000
That's correct.
from the improvement account into the general fund?
That's right.
But we don't know what it was for?
It looks, it's hard to tell. There's nobody here that was involved in the transaction at the time to question, but it looks as though that money was taken in anticipation of some revenue shortfall in the general fund.
Okay. I guess one of the questions I would have is, do we have any other accounts set up like this that we don't have control over, that we don't know if money was...
This is the only one I'm aware of.
Okay. And you mentioned in here that it may not, it's probably not in compliance with general laws?
That's correct. In general, accounts that are funded by city assets, and in a sense that $1 fee and the 60% of the excess of the operations of the auditorium are, in a sense, city fees. Those bank accounts should be under the control of the treasurer's office.
And what does that require some type of vote, or is that something you do
No.
administrative?
No, we're going to contact the auditorium management company and request that they turn the funds into us.
I mean, the good news is it looks like they're doing a great job, and we're picking up about $100,000 a year from them.
Right.
It's just that,
And once again, I want to stress in my report, I don't think there's any control problem. Those accounts are being audited. The audited financial statements are being turned over to the city so that we can actually see. There's transparency here.
right. It's just that the transfer seems like it was made for no apparent reason, other than maybe revenue. All right. Thank you.
Councilor Donahue?
Yeah, what struck me was, I know a couple of weeks ago, we referred Mr. Sullivan's concerns about the arena to finance. I think it might make sense to refer this issue to finance too. I don't know whether the chair of finance, I mean, it's very similar kind of issues, both facilities needing capital improvements and maybe having some overview of these, city-owned and controlled facilities, both the arena, both really taking about the same amount of budget line each year, $1.5 million to the arena, $1.4 million to the auditorium. I mean, there are other offsets, but maybe if we can have both matters looked at by finance and the manager's office when that matter comes up.
Mr. Manager?
Counselor, in the, that motion from a couple of weeks ago to look at the arena, I believe it also included looking at the ballpark, and I think I had indicated at that time that the way I was intending to respond to that was to also include the auditorium in that process. I think we should look at all of these enterprise, entertainment venue, enterprise accounts.
Right.
And I think that your point is a very good one. It really should be looked at in the same manner.
I mean, it looks like in 2003, 300,000 came from the auditorium account to the general fund.
Right.
Now, we didn't know that or vote on it, but the fact is that money was supposed to be for the building, and we know there's a big need. And I'm not saying the money was wasted. I'm just saying it came from one pocket over to the other. So we should really get a overall view of all these facilities.
I agree. And we are intending to apply for a grant for about $1 million to work on to do some work at the auditorium, because there are some structural issues there, and that will require the city coming up with $1 million as well. So these funds would have been helpful in that account for us to put towards that project. But in terms of the debt service associated with our share, the money that we're getting turned in now should go a long way towards helping us with that problem. But again, that should be part of our analysis that we present to the Finance Subcommittee and the Council.
Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do know, and Mr. Manager, you know as well, and the council knows, that there is a board of trustees at the auditorium of 6 people. All the books are audited once a year, and I spoke to Tom about this report. It's nothing that's being done illegally. It's just probably not being done follow through with the city. But I do know that the board of trustees invests thousands of dollars over the years to improve the auditorium, carpeting or whatever it might be. So I just want to put my say in that.
Okay. Any other things on communications from the manager? Councilor Elliott?
I just want to follow up on that, considering I filed the motion on the auditorium. Mr. Moses, you indicate in your report that the $300,000 was a transfer into the general fund. That wouldn't make any sense to me if the money is supposed to be for capital improvements. I mean, I understand that you're saying that, from what you can gather, I suppose, is this just you looking at what transfers came up from the Lowell Memorial Auditorium and not that account itself?
Exactly. I was
so we have no access to that account at all whatsoever. That I was a little taken aback, quite frankly. Not that anything's happening to the money, that considering we subsidize, or we give the auditorium close to $400,000, and we do receive those audited statements that those receipts and expenditures didn't go through the auditor's office, and which I'm glad I filed the motion, because it makes some sense to take a look at this.
Well, I caution you on that it's unclear on how those funds were actually used. When they're recorded as revenue in the general fund, they go into the entire pot of receipts that the city gets, including property taxes and state
Right.
aid and everything. And that all of that is a component of free cash. And to the extent that free cash is spent potentially on improvements at the auditorium, the money may have, in effect, gone right where it should have gone. But that requires a lot of forensic investigation.
Well, I was going to say, Mr. Moses, that's sort of a stretch. I mean, that's you could probably presume that that's the case with any receipt that goes in, right?
You could. We'd have to look at the entire appropriations of the city in the last several years to see if, in fact, in the general fund, there were line items dedicated to the auditorium, and there may have been.
Okay. Well, I mean, the good news is that money certainly went to the general fund, but has it happened in the past? I mean, the bottom line is, I filed the motion because we have some serious problems at that at that place, and I believe in 98 when we completed, I wasn't here, but in 98, that's when, 88 is when the fund was initiated, and, X amount of dollars was supposed to go into it from, from revenues generated as well as a dollar surcharge. So I can understand in close to 18, 19 years that some money has been expended. Do we know how much is in there? Because I was thinking ahead, well, hopefully we're going to apply for this $1 million grant, and we'll have money available for it. That was the reason why I filed the
Right.
motion.
I believe it's in the report that approximately $300,000 is still in there.
Okay. I saw the 300,000 transferred out. You're right. Okay. Is there any way to find out where? I don't know how many shows they had. I don't know how many tickets they sold, but it would seem to make some sense. And I've spoken to Tom McKay about this as well. That there is that problem. We're applying for the grant, and how are we going to pay for it from the city side?
I mean, I think that we can certainly take a look at, I haven't looked specifically at the audit for
Okay.
for that information, but we can see if that's readily available to get that information.
Okay,
Again, I think that looking at all of these venues with some careful analysis is a worthwhile endeavor. And I think that clearly this needs to be done here as well.
Right. I mean, with all the shows, all these, and I don't want to belabor the point. I'm happy to discuss it in the finance subcommittee. It makes a lot of sense. I'm sure they had to upgrade the carpet and do some, general capital improvements. So I'll look forward to discussing this in subcommittee and get a better handle on, how do we make these entities more self-sufficient, if you will.
Right.
Thank you. Council
Thank you,
Milonazo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On that same issue, through you to Mr. Moses, can you give us a clarification on whether or not there was actually a bond authorized? Because you do state in your memo that there was the Mill City indicated that the money was to be used to pay debt on a bond that was issued, when in fact, I guess there wasn't a bond issued.
Right. There are no bonds outstanding that are specific to the auditorium. And I went back to the year 2000 to see if any bonds had been issued, and it didn't look like any bonds were specifically issued. We had issued one bond, I believe, in 2002 that included an array of commingled capital, and I don't know specifically if there was a piece of that was issued for the auditorium, because I couldn't locate any detail on specific items. But there wasn't anything dedicated solely to the auditorium.
Councilor Donnie? Oh.
Just, I believe, and we can get this information, I believe the MRT, I know we voted, there was a dollar surcharge imposed at MRT as well a few years back, and I think that's part of the same figure. And I know there have been improvements done there and so forth at the MRT as well as the auditorium. So, I think, again, no one's suggesting that people didn't do the right thing with the money. It's just, we should look at all these things, especially in light of the extraordinary repairs coming up.
I'd like to mention and reiterate that Mr. McKay had indicated that there have been several substantial expenditures from this fund at the auditorium for improvements on the auditorium itself over the last several years, funded by that $1.
Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, when you do request how many venues there were at the auditorium, you must also request all the dates that they had programs there that was absolutely no cost at all. No tickets were taken. The mayor and I attended a ceremony where 1,100 people were sworn in as citizens of this country. There were 2,200 people in attendance. There's no cost. There's no cost associated with that. The auditorium still has to furnish microphones, custodial services, etc. And I, for one, am very proud of the fact that 1,100 people chose to come here with a federal judge to be sworn in as citizens. I believe that same thing happened early in January, and it's going to happen again. So there'll be 3 functions where there's going to be huge turnouts in that building. I know that we had shows there for the Boy Scouts and many other nonprofits who go into the building, and there's no cost associated with that. So you have to balance the scale here.
Councilor Rita Mercia.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In keeping in tune with Councilor Caulfield is saying, there are many, many events at the auditorium that is free to the public. People come from all over to go in and see the shows. For example, the United States Air Force has their Tops and Blues. Too bad they have it on a Tuesday because we miss it. I had a chance to see it 2 years in a row, though, and it's simply tremendous. And it packs the house, and it's free to the public. So you have to have people there to usher people in, and so there's an expense, and it's eaten up by the arena, the Lowell Memorial Auditorium people. So they're in with conjunction with what Councilor Caulfield said. There's many shows like that.
Councilor Donahue.
I think you'll find that the auditorium charges a substantial discounted fee to nonprofits, but there is a fee charged usually. I don't know, I mean, show by show, but I know other nonprofits that I've been involved in, but they certainly deeply discount their ordinary fee so that they can cover the expenses. But nonetheless, it's a benefit to the public to be able to see a show like Tops and Blue and so forth.
Okay. Other questions or comments on manager communications? Okay. Motion to accept the communications placed on file by Councilor Broderick, second by Councilor Elliott. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Communications are accepted. We have 2 requests for out-of-state travel. Any objection to considering them together? So we'll take them both together. First is a request from Ken LaValle, Acting Police Superintendent, to send 1 employee of the Lowell Police Department to the New England Law Enforcement Development Seminar in Manchanteket, Connecticut. I butchered that pretty well. The Housing Authority will pay for the fee for the seminar, and funds for the hotel and per diem will come from the Law Enforcement Trust Fund. The second request is for Mark Young, Director of Wastewater, to send 2 employees of the Lowell Wastewater Facility to U.S. Environmental Agency and Water Environment Federation training held February 20th through 23rd in Hartford, Connecticut. Funds for this come from the wastewater budget. If you have any questions, please let me know. Bernard F. Lynch, City Manager.
Move approval.
Motion approved by Councilor Armin Mercier, second by Councilor Rita Mercier. Roll call.
Councilor Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Armin Mercia.
Yes.
Councilor Rita Mercia.
Yes.
Councilor Milonazo.
Yes.
Councilor Ramirez.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Okay. The next item is a vote declaring surplus property at 2628 Lawrence Street. I believe this is going to be withdrawn, Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to withdraw this. We're investigating the possibility of utilizing this property for municipal purposes, so at this time I'd ask that this be withdrawn.
Okay. Any objection? Hearing none, the matter is withdrawn. Next item is a vote authorizing the Division of Planning and Development to apply for, accept, and expend funds from One Family, Inc. of the Paul and Phyllis Fireman Foundation. The motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Milonazo. All those in favor of waiving the full reading say aye. Any opposed? The full reading is waived. Second reading by title, a vote authorizing the Division of Planning and Development to apply for, accept, and expend funds from One Family, Inc. of the Paul and Phyllis Fireman Charitable Foundation. Questions? Roll call.
Councilor Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Armin Mercia.
Yes.
Councilor Rita Mercia.
Yes.
Councilor Milonazo.
Yes.
Councilor Ramirez.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
9 yeas.
9 yeas, the matter is approved. Next item is a vote to rescind a prior vote dated September 26, 2006, declaring surplus property at 172 Lakeview Ave and authorizing the city manager to seek proposals under the provisions of the homework program adopted by the City Council on April 4, 2000 for the disposition of said parcel at 172 Lakeview Ave. Motion to waive the full reading by Counsel Broderick, second by Counsel Milonazo. All those in favor of waiving the full reading say aye. Any opposed? The full reading is waived. Second reading by title, a vote rescinding a prior vote dated September 26, 2006, and declaring surplus the property at 172 Lakeview Avenue, and authorizing the city manager to seek proposals under the provisions of the homework program adopted by the City Council on April 4, 2000 for the disposition of said parcel at 172 Lakeview Avenue in Lowell. Any questions? Roll call.
Counselor Caulfield.
Yes.
Counselor Donahue.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Arman Mercia.
Yes.
Counselor Rita Mercia.
Yes.
Counselor Milonazo.
Yes.
Counselor Ramirez.
Yes.
Counselor Broderick.
Yes.
Nine yes.
Okay. Next item is a communication concerning the Lowell Water Board. Dear Mayor Martin, members of the City Council, pursuant to the authority vested in me as City Manager under Mass General Laws, Chapter 43, Section 104, in the Code of the City of Lowell, Section 18-201, I have appointed, effective January 30, 2007, the following person for the Lowell Water Board to fill a vacancy as the non-employee member to serve for such term as the City Manager in his discretion shall determine, but in no event more than a 5-year term or until a successor is appointed and qualified. Mark E. Byrne, 315 Wentworth Avenue, Lowell. Under the above referenced statute, confirmation by the City Council is not required. I have attached a copy of Mr. Byrne's resume for your review. We'll be happy to answer any inquiries you may have concerning this appointment. Very truly yours, Bernard F. Lynch, City Manager. Councilor Rita Mercer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the city manager, I just want to know what is the duty of a person that is put on this particular water board, and how many members are there, and who are they, would you know?
There are 3 members of the Water Board. There is Mark Young serves, Eddie Walsh, the Commissioner of Public Works serves, and this is the non-employee representative. And the purpose of the Water Board is to hear appeals on water bills from residents of the city that have questions regarding what they've been charged.
So if someone thought that their bill was pretty high, their water bill, and they thought they had a faulty water meter, would that be considered part of that too?
Yes, it would.
And do these people meet as the case comes up, or they meet once a month, or how?
They meet as cases come up.
As cases come up.
Correct.
So if we have like 3 complaints within a month, they would meet
They would
relative to
call those people in and meet with those
Okay,
people and hear their
that's fine.
appeal.
I just want clarification, that's all. Thank you.
Motion to, Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. Can you get us report, Mr. Manager, on exactly how much is abated on an annual basis? I think it could be substantial, and of course, that's revenue generating. It goes into the general fund at this point, and I understand that there should be exceptions. I spoke to, I think it was Mr. Young or Mr. Layeff, who indicated, yes, there are a lot of elderly folks or people that just come and say, why is this happening? And it could be a faulty meter or, a broken toilet or things of that nature. But I also understand that you have landlords, absentee landlords that come in and say, well, you know what, my tenant didn't tell me that the water was running for a month or things of that nature. All the while taxpayers have to, foot that bill. So I'd be interested to find out exactly how much, it costs us, if you will. And again, not that there needs to be an appeal process for those people that have a legitimate concern, but landlords that come in over and over and over just to reduce their water bill, I don't think that's fair, so appreciate that.
We will get that report for you, Council.
Motion to accept the communication placed in file by Councilor Broderick, second by Councilor Milonazo. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Communication is accepted. Next item is a vote accepting Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 32B, Section 16, offering optional voluntary medical insurance to be provided by a healthcare organization commonly called an HMO, whereas Mass General Laws, Chapter 32B, Section 16 provides for the offer to employees the voluntary and optional employee selection of medical insurance by healthcare organizations commonly called HMOs, or continuing coverage under the traditional indemnity healthcare plan, and whereas the city manager is recommending the acceptance of Mass General Laws, Chapter 32B, Section 16, and whereas a copy of Chapter 32B, Section 16 is attached hereto and marked A, whereas the City Council pursuant to Council Rule 28 is required to hold a public hearing at least 1 week prior to this vote. Now therefore it is voted by a majority of the vote of the Lowell City Council as follows. The City of Lowell, acting through its City Council, hereby accepts the provisions of Mass General Laws, Chapter 32B, Section 16, which offers medical insurance as an optional voluntary basis to be provided by a healthcare organization commonly called an HMO in lieu of continuing medical coverage under the traditional health indemnity plan. This matter is referred to a public hearing.
Public hearing on February 20th.
So
Allow
moved.
for advertising.
Referred to, motion to refer to public hearing by Councilor Armin Mercia, second by Councilor Caulfield,
What's that date, Mr. Mayor?
February 20th,
20th.
February 20th?
to allow for time for advertising. Councilor Broderick, you have something to say in the motion?
I think I'm gonna be on vacation that week. I don't know,
Councilor Elliott?
I'm going to be at that school vacation week. And some of
Okay.
us got young kids, so we'll be on vacation.
We do it the following week?
27th.
All right. Councilor
But I want-
Councilor Donahue.
I was going to suggest it be on a week that's not a school vacation week, because a lot of times people are away, and sometimes, we've usually gotten a quorum, but we run the risk that if the flu hits, we don't, so.
You can't have it the 13th?
Well, let me ask
Yeah.
Mr. Clerk, can we
Huh?
do it for the 13th?
13th.
Yeah, I could make a call to the Lowell Sun and we could push the advertising up,
13th.
do it on the 13th.
Okay. Motion to refer this matter to a public hearing on February 13th by Councilor Armin Mercia, second by Councilor Caulfield. Anybody else on the motion? Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, just for the people watching at home, could you explain exactly what this public hearing is about and what we're trying to do? I think we all understand it, or I'd like a little bit more of an explanation, actually. I did file a motion about the Group Insurance Commission a while ago, and that doesn't seem to be a fit for the city because we're self-insured. However, there was a very good article in the Boston Globe yesterday addressing health insurance and, the double-digit increases that are having a major impact on all the communities, including Lowell. And while this will help alleviate some of it, can you just explain to us exactly what we will be voting on?
Sure. Essentially what, as you know, we've been going through a whole process of reviewing all aspects of the city operation, including the ordinances and the various offerings that the city makes and coverages it provides and insurances and employee practices and so on. And one thing that came to our attention as we have been working on the issue of health insurance and reviewing our ordinances internally as well as with the Department of Revenue is that, in fact, the city never accepted the provision of the Massachusetts general laws that allows us to offer HMOs. We do have a number of employees that are now covered through HMOs throughout the city, but legally, we really don't have the authority to be offering those HMOs because we never accepted the enabling statute. So this would simply allow us to, it would match up what we're doing with what's required by the law. That's the short answer to your question.
Okay, and I see Mr. Georges is here. Just a clarification for my own purposes, and maybe the other members know. Does the school department, they just have Master Medical, as I understand, and not HMOs?
That's correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
And
Now, I will say that this statute, and that you have been provided a copy of it, this statute does require that once it's accepted by the city, then you have to make the HMOs available to all employees of the city. And I've had discussions with Mr. George as well as other representatives of the unions that represent the school employees that this will have that effect, and we'll have to sit down and talk about that once some action is taken. The flip side, of course, to that is that if it's not accepted, then again the city is acting illegally in providing HMO coverage to those employees and those other unions that have that are making use of that program.
If we had adopted this in the past, would all employees be eligible, or is that
Well,
a union, a collective bargaining agreement, or as the statute, anybody is allowed to participate in the HMO?
in the HMO, with the acceptance of this statute. Without the acceptance of this statute, the employees that are in the HMOs should not be in the HMOs.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Manager.
I know Mr. Georges did register to speak, but when we hear from Council Donahue first.
I just want to, and I know we'll get more information for the public hearing next week or the week after, but this, accepting this, for informational purposes only, accepting this assuming that the council accepts the statute, it in no way changes the offering to those unions on the city side that currently have the option to participate in HMOs, correct?
That's correct.
In other words, it doesn't change their status whatsoever.
Exactly.
Okay,
They keep all the offerings that they have now.
All right. Whereas as you said, the flip side is if we didn't accept it, then it could change their
by
status.
rights, we shouldn't be offering
Okay.
the HMOs, and we'd have to look at how we would pull those
How we do it.
back.
Okay. Councilor Ramirez?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, so will we be voting on the 13th?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank you, Mr. Manager, for calling me last night at home, and we discussed this. And part of our conversation was the retirees. They're paranoid that something's going to happen to their insurance, and you more or less assured me nothing is going to happen to the retirees.
This does not do anything to retirees. If I may, Council, the only thing this does is it makes
a choice.
Some of the employees, some of the retirees, eligible to utilize the HMO if they
Right. I brought this up approximately 14 months ago or so, and I had a long discussion with Kathy Cheney, and we fished through some records and so forth. In the year 2000, the medical cost, health insurance cost to the city was $13 million a year. In 2006, it's $28 million a year. And HMO Blue is an excellent program, an excellent plan. I have an HMO Blue, and my wife sees the best doctors in Boston, and so don't I. Physicals and so forth. It's $5 copayment. And there's nothing wrong with an HMO Blue. It's an excellent plan. So that's all I have to say.
Okay. Councilor Elliott?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be just quick. Mr. Manager, what year was it that HMOs were, I guess, not officially accepted, but were introduced and employees were allowed to, when did HMO come into the city?
I believe those were done in the late 1990s here in the city.
Okay, so the late 90s. And are you also, I understand, are you also working on whether it's a provision or it's an amendment to the ordinance on looking at those individuals that are coming into the retirement system very late in the game? They have 20 plus years, and then they're coming to Lowell in the latter years, and they're naturally eligible for health insurance costs because it is good health insurance, and that's just completely inflating, our health insurance costs, which, I'm sure the actuarial report from GASB 45 will take that into consideration, but that's something I think we have to address, at a local level. I mean, you can't come in for the last year of your retirement and then be eligible for those benefits because, our system is, that's abuse is not the right word, but misusing, those funds.
Councilor, I'm actually working with the Solicitor's Office and Human Relations and promulgating regulations regarding that issue.
Thank you.
Right. If I could, just to clarify, in response to Councilor Ramirez's question, we'd be voting next week. Council Rule 28 specifies you hold a public hearing, and then you're supposed to wait a week to have the vote. So if we do want to vote next week at the conclusion of the public hearing, it would require a suspension of Rule 28. Councilor Donahue? Okay, we can do that at the time. Right, if we wanted to do that. Mr. Georges, did you want to speak? Keep in mind, we still have to hold a public hearing on this matter.
Yes, no, I understand. What's that? No, I won't. Yeah, no, it's kind of funny because I'm looking at a number of people that we negotiated with because they were mayors at various times. Yeah, we remember the HMO talk is right. The fact of the matter is, though, over that period of time, as you remember, HMO came to the table, and HMO was not accepted by us for a number of reasons. And yet, the position, you were under the impression, I believe, at that time, that this had already been adopted. This proposal, which is now being brought to you by the city manager, had been adopted. But never once did you think that you could impose acceptance on a voluntary basis of an HMO to us. Not one of you that were mayor at that time and spoke to us about it. This manager believes that he can, that by adopting this, he can circumvent the legitimate negotiating process and go to our members directly, asking them to accept an HMO with no protection that we would have through the ordinary negotiating process. I will tell you, I'm not going to go into details about the current negotiations that we're in, but we did make a gesture, I think a significant gesture, to offer other plans to our members from the menu of health insurance plans, with specifically the idea of trying to let the members determine which would be the best plan for them. And since the Master Medical Indemnity Plan is the most expensive thing on the menu, any option to go to any other plan would obviously result in a savings on the part of the city. Obviously might free up some additional money so that we could try to get a contract done. So while we're doing that, and for the first time since I've been here in 15 years, we're looking at options, we're also facing the possibility that if you adopt this and the city manager stays on the same track that he's in, he's going to circumvent the bargaining table. It's his impression that he has the right under this provision to go directly to him, have a conversation with me, but not bargain. I would even show you that this original document that was originally part of this packet included the words collective bargaining in two separate places that were scoured from the final document that you have in front of you. I had a conversation earlier with the city solicitor where she indicated, well, where it says collective bargaining, it's not really collective bargaining, essentially implying that they have the right to impose that without us doing due diligence to protect the interests of our members at the bargaining table. I want you to keep in mind, if we have this on the table, the legitimate way of dealing with it is at the bargaining table, not to circumvent that process. And the first HMOs offered in this city were offered in 1996. No one since 1996 through today, until today, when I got a phone call last night from City Manager Lynch, last night, indicating that this was going to be considered today. Why is it done in such a rush? Why were the other city unions told at 10 o'clock this morning that this was going to be considered today? Is this you simply find an attorney somewhere else that has a different interpretation and you listen to it? Because it's a way of circumventing the legitimate negotiating process that we've endeavored to work with every city union, school department and city union for decades. All I'm simply saying is, if there's any consideration, I would hope that you as a city council, if you adopt this, that you instruct City Manager Lynch to follow the logical protocol that's necessary by bringing it to the table that we already have in place through the process of negotiating right now for a successive teacher's contract and paraprofessionals contract and other school department unions contracts, rather than simply taking the opinion that you can somehow unilaterally circumvent that process. Because I can tell you straight out, there'll be unfair labor practices as there are now in Chelmsford in dealing with the teachers union there. That will go on indefinitely because we're not about, you know us, I think you know us well enough. We're going to be dogged about representing our members. This year we came in with the attitude that we could do some creative things that would help both sides. If this kind of attitude is what, then maybe we shouldn't have done that to start with. It's on the table, it needs to be dealt with at the table, not away from the table, not in some kind of impact bargain someplace where, and I just want to let you know ahead of time. I appreciate the fact that you've made the decision not to act on this tonight. I respect that decision. I appreciate that, the fact that you've assured us that there will at least be a public hearing. Because my understanding was, the intention was to circumvent the public hearing by asking you to eliminate the public hearing and vote on it tonight. So thank you for your consideration. I just want to be forewarned, and I'll be glad to inform you or answer any questions that you might have about it.
Councilor Donahue?
I just want to state for the record, we are holding a public hearing because that's what our rules require, period. I wouldn't read anything more or less into it. We're following our own council rules by holding a public hearing, so.
Councilor Ramirez?
Mayor, I will belabor it just a little bit. I certainly appreciate Paul George's position, and I think he is a tireless advocate for his members, but I want to be clear that when the council entered into these agreements, as you just said, they were under the assumption that this was accepted, and accepting it as a condition preceding to enter into the contract. So all we're trying to do is rectify something that would have been done. So I appreciate where you're coming from, and I certainly don't begrudge any of your advocacy skills, and I hope you do take them to the max, but as...
Yeah, Councilor, I really need to... Okay. We really shouldn't be staking out positions in advance of the public hearing.
I'm just being clear about what the rules that we're following, and making sure that Mr. Georges understands how much I appreciate his advocacy, but that this isn't the place for telling us how hard you're going to work for your members and what collective bargainings and what protocols you're going to follow. So, all right.
If I might answer that, because it was
Councilor-
directed to me, if you wouldn't mind.
Well,
Look,
we're going to have to...
Okay, that's
going to
fine.
have
If
to
you-
be answered at the public
Mr.
hearing.
Mayor, we're going to have a public hearing
Right.
February 13th. I
Fine.
think we should
Right.
move on.
So, Councilor Broderick?
Thank you. If there is a legal opinion, could we get a copy of that before the public hearing, or for the public hearing?
Yes.
I assume that was brought up last week.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering out loud, there's no objection to having the public hearing and waiving the vote for that extra week. There's no objection to that, right?
I think that has to be voted at the conclusion of the hearing.
But I'm asking, I don't,
I might object. It depends on what happens at the public hearing.
Public hearings are
We better wait for the public hearing before we decide to do these things. Excuse me for interrupting. The public hearing has to take place, and at that point, if everybody's happy that it can be waived, so be it. But if two people are not happy, it won't be waived. So,
well, I was just inquiring because the speaker that came up to the podium, I don't know if he's objecting to that week delay or that vote right after. I didn't know what his opinion was on that.
Councilor,
that was going to happen tonight.
it's going to have to be decided at the conclusion of the hearing. We'll do the best to expedite the hearing.
But
for
I'm
the
happy to
13th.
hear we're having a public hearing. That's the way that it should be. These are the rules.
Right. Councilor Elliott?
I just want the manager to respond that this was not done to circumvent anything. I thought you were very clear to say, and I think the chapter is very clear to say that communities, it's right in the first section, you have to adopt this. And we didn't adopt it, so we're not in compliance. So those individuals on HMO, well...
Councilor, it's really staking out a position in advance of the public hearing.
The reason why we're doing this is my point. I'm not taking a position one way or the other. We're doing this because we're not in compliance, right?
That's correct.
Could he also make it clear that we're not in compliance during the Martin administration, not John Cox? Just so
Well,
we set
apparently
the
this
record
goes
straight.
back to 1996.
Well, this is not about that. That's why I asked. It was done in '96. So
Right.
well, it doesn't matter when we were or we're not. The fact of the matter is that's why we're
I
here.
want to blame John Cox for this.
Well,
He's being
that's-
blamed for enough stuff.
But we will be in the Lynch administration.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Any further discussion on this? All right, so the motion to refer this to a public hearing on February 13th by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Caulfield. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The matter will be fully aired at a public hearing on February 13th. Okay, next item is a vote implementing municipal charges lien authorized by Chapter...
That's why he's got an HMO.
Okay. Vote implementing municipal charges lien authorized by Chapter 390 of the Acts of 2002. Whereas by Chapter 390 of the Acts of 2002, effective December 5th, 2002, the City of Lowell was authorized to impose liens on real property of any owner for any unpaid municipal charges, including unpaid fees or fines imposed by the City of Lowell pursuant to any ordinance, local regulation, statute, or state regulation. Whereas the City of Lowell, pursuant to said act and other statutory authority, has imposed liens for certain unpaid charges. And whereas, in order to broaden the scope of use of this lien process, this vote is submitted for council action thereon. Now, therefore, be it voted by a majority vote of the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, that pursuant to Chapter 390 of the Acts of 2002, the City of Lowell, acting through its city manager and applicable department head, be and hereby are authorized to impose and record a lien against the real property of any owner for any unpaid municipal charge, fee, or fine on any and all such charges, fees, or fines of whatever kind or nature imposed by and on behalf of the City of Lowell by the city manager and/or any other applicable department heads which are authorized by any city ordinance, city code, or other regulation, or by any state statute or regulation. And be it further voted that all such municipal charges, fees, or fines referred to in the above vote are hereby allowed to be collected pursuant to the process set forth in Chapter 390 of the Acts of 2002, and be it further voted that the authority to collect and lien property for any unpaid municipal charges, fees, or fines pursuant to Chapter 390 of the Acts of 2002, and this vote is not intended to and does not in any way supersede or limit any other statutory or regulatory authority relative to the powers and methods to collect and lien properties for any and all municipal charges, fees, or fines. Second reading by title, a vote implementing the municipal charges lien authorized by Chapter 390 of the Acts of 2002. Questions? Councilor Rita
Yes.
Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a little bit confusing. There already is a municipal charge to lien property by the Acts of 2002, Chapter 390. Is this vote allowing us to implement that law?
Yes, it is.
Why do we, if we create a law, why do we not, now we have to vote to implement something we already put through? I don't understand that.
Councilor, I think
How
this
long
is
was this on the
state
books?
legislature law, not
Right.
our law. It was adopted by the state
And did this
legislature.
just come in to us? This was not on the books before?
It came in 2002.
And we're just getting around to implementing it in 2007. I don't understand that.
Counselor, I can't answer for...
So all these years, we've just sat on this law that's very, very important, I thought. And someone figured it out, and now we're going to vote to make sure we implement this law that was created in 2002. Do we have more rules and laws like that we could be generating money from, and we just, I mean, this is ridiculous. This is government. This is what we're doing. We're implementing a rule and a law that was established in 2002. That's why I'm confused by it. I think it's like, if you create a law, it should be implemented immediately.
Well, the legislature takes a number of steps through the course of the year, and their local option. And it's up to the communities to decide whether they want to accept it or not. The city has always had the ability to, lien for property taxes, but this extends it out. It assists the community in collecting other charges, other fees and fines, by putting those on a municipal lien as well for the property. Should it have been accepted sooner? Absolutely. I can't disagree with you on that at all. I can only agree with you enthusiastically, but it hasn't been done, and I'm sure there are other, as you saw earlier, there are certain statutes that the city has not accepted, but should be accepting.
So are these only rules and laws created by the legislature? In other words, if we as a council create a law, do we then have to create another vote to implement the law that we just passed, or is this just a legislative thing?
This is just a legislative This is just a
Gee,
local
and
option.
I'm wondering how many more good things did the legislature pass to us that we haven't implemented it yet?
We will keep on looking,
Because
Counselor.
we need the revenue. If people, being fined or increased fees that they owe us, then we should be getting this revenue. So this is a good thing we're bringing up. I'm better
Absolutely.
late than never, I guess.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Councilor Ramirez?
I just want to support Council Mercier on that. I think that there's been an obvious lack of curiosity in this building for some time, and we need to continue to rototiller the soil, so I appreciate everything you're doing, Mr. Manager.
Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think back in the Martin administration, Mr. Manager, the council approved an ordinance of a law that any owner, business owner, if they owed property taxes, if they needed a license, if they needed any special permits, they would not receive those if they owed back taxes. And that's on the books as we speak, isn't it?
Correct.
So there was a law in place, and we had an issue with one of the kings of the property taxes. You probably well know him, Mr. Manager, from Chelmsford, and he needed a liquor license, and the city denied that liquor license, and he went into court, and the judge said, "How do you expect this poor man to pay his back taxes if you don't let him have his license?" So you're beating your head against the wall. But we do have a law in the books that anyone who owes back taxes, they need a license or permits, they will not receive it unless their taxes are paid up in full.
Mr. Manager?
If I may, Counselor, I believe that was another local option
Right.
act that the city obviously accepted back in the 90s, or maybe even a little bit sooner than that. This just adds a little bit more teeth because of the ability to lien the property.
Okay, roll call.
Councilor Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Arman Mercia.
Yes.
Councilor Rita Mercia.
Yes.
Councilor Milonazo.
Yes.
Councilor Ramirez.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
9 yes.
Okay. Next item is a vote authorizing the city manager to apply for, accept, and expend a grant from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency for FEMA pre-disaster mitigation, flood mitigation assistance grants. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Donahue. Vote second reading. All those in favor of that motion say aye. Any opposed? The first full reading is waived. Second reading by title, a vote authorizing the city manager to apply for, accept, and expend a grant from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency for FEMA pre-disaster mitigation, flood mitigation assistance grants. Any questions? Roll call.
Councilor Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Arman Mercia.
Yes.
Councilor Rita Mercia.
Yes.
Councilor Milonazo.
Yes.
Councilor Ramirez.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Okay. The next two items are votes for revised budgets on school building projects. I believe these items are also to be withdrawn. Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor and Councilors, as you recall, last week we discussed the projects at the Maury and the Old Butler School, which is designated by the state as the Cardinal O'Connell School. We'll know it as the Sapasaris. The request of the council last week was that I seek an extension and work with the delegation to seek an extension of the time period in which we had to make a decision as to which procedure or which process we were going to follow, either the grant conversion or the 2% loan program. The 2% loan program would be moving forward with both of these projects. I'm happy to report that the delegation was able to help us in our efforts to extend out that period of time. In particular, Senator Pangiatakis did some work on our behalf and followed up on the preliminary discussions that we had had with the school building assistance people. But all the members of the delegation were very helpful during that process. And we're now looking at having that extension out to the end of March beginning of April. They should be sending us a letter any day now that we should be receiving that. That will allow us to now get the bids in, so we'll know what the real cost of the project is moving forward, and obviously we'll be able to make more informed decisions based upon that. So I would withdraw both of these motions this time.
Okay. Any objection to these items being withdrawn? Councilor Rita Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a problem with them being withdrawn, and I can understand why one for $4 million is to the Morey School, but why is the other one to the Cardinal O'Connell School?
Council, that's the, it should be the old Butler School, or
Oh.
now as we
Oh,
know
I
it, the
see.
Sapasaris.
'Cause,
It's,
yeah,
the
that's,
state insists upon calling it the Cardinal O'Connell.
oh, I thought it would have said Old Butler School. All right,
This
that's
is what
fine.
they, this is what they designated on the grant
Okay, that's fine.
materials.
Councilor Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't aware that these motions were going to be withdrawn. There are a couple of individuals I was going to ask to suspend the rules that wanted to speak on this as it relates to the new schools from the unions. So if there's no objection, I think there's value that they can add to the pre-qualification process that we're right in the middle of, which is going to continue here on out. So rather than file a motion, I think it'd be appropriate to allow them to speak.
I think they may have left, though. Oh, no, okay. Any objection to hearing from,
What are we going to hear?
What is it for?
What's the purpose of
The purpose is for them to share information on the pre-qualification process that is going to continue regardless of these schools.
Are they experts?
Pre-qualification of...
these are,
Of contractors. I can file a motion next week that doesn't.
Perhaps I could offer just some
Mr. Manager?
some information. There's a new process that's followed under the new school building assistance program that all subcontractors have to go through and contractors have to go through a pre-qualification process. And we have a committee that is made up of representatives of the city, as well as input from our project manager and architect, and they're reviewing all of the information regarding all of the people that are interested in bidding on these projects. So apparently this is additional information beyond what's been provided to the committee, I assume.
Correct.
So are these, Councilor Donahue?
The only thing I was going to point out, we were told, the subcommittee was told that 223 bidders and sub-bidders had submitted pre-qualification packets and had been pre-qualified. Out of all of the different contractors and subcontractors, only one was going back out to bid, and that was because they need 3 or more for each process or something. So one more was going back out, and that may be back by now. So as far as what the subcommittee was told, the pre-qualification had already been reviewed. The pre-qualifying level, anyway, had already been certified. Is that the word, or under the new law, for all of those who were trying to pre-qualify or expressed an interest in bidding? Does that make sense under the new law? Maybe the solicitor can explain it better.
Yeah, I do think the independent project manager has a role in that.
Right.
Correct.
Madam Solicitor, you have...
Right, without really knowing exactly what additional information the council would be obtaining this evening, I'd be a little reluctant to, in any way, have the council or the city exposed to some sort of, ex parte solicitations or information
Maybe refer to the manager.
beyond the process that's already in place.
That's fine. I'll just I'll file a motion for next week to make sure we do this the right way.
Okay. Councilor Caulfield?
I'm a little confused here. I have never entertained any contractors before this body. Listen to them. That doesn't belong in front of us. That belongs in front of the school committee, the architect, and so forth. We don't.
These people aren't contractors. They're members of a union that's involved in members and certification of a pre-qualification process. They had some information to share. They can bring it to the subcommittee. I can file a motion next week. It doesn't matter. I'm not trying to circumvent any process or bring any contractors before this body.
Okay. Councilor Ramirez,
Yeah, I don't disagree with Council Elliott. My concerns are now, though, with what City Solicitor Christine O'Connor has said, which is if we entertain information relative to anybody that may be prejudicial ahead of time, would we be exposing ourselves? I think that's the issue. So that's something maybe that we can, or you can speak to the gentleman about.
Nope, that's fine, that makes sense.
Okay, so the matters are withdrawn. Any objection to the matters being withdrawn? And the rules are not suspended to entertain any other speakers on this topic. No one had registered to speak either, even though the matters were withdrawn. So, all right, that brings us to subcommittee reports. Any subcommittee reports? Councilor Broderick.
It's not a report, but a subcommittee meeting for next Wednesday, the 8th, 5 o'clock for the zoning subcommittee. Been informed that we have about 9 items or so. DPD is the manager is ready to bring forward for, I guess we call it phase 2 of the zoning. So, Mr. Clerk, if we could have it here and have it televised Wednesday.
Wednesday?
Yeah, is it
We have a
school committee?
Right.
So we do it Tuesday then.
Following our rules, I move that the items be referred to the subcommittee on zoning.
Yeah, we'll put it,
At 5. Was that? Well, that was already in subcommittee. We were waiting for it to. We were waiting for the report. It's just basically continuing. Yeah, it's not on my own.
Okay.
They meet at 7, right?
Councilor, hearing from the manager that DPD had planned a presentation on the 13th. Does that sound familiar?
No. I had heard the 12th, but the bean pot was then, so could we do it the 7th or the 8th?
Oh, well,
So
I know.
I guess what we'll do is pick a date and put it in the packet.
All right. This matter's been pending before the subcommittee for some time?
Yes, since last spring, I believe.
All right,
And
so why don't you get a date from the other members and we'll just announce it? Okay. Okay, other subcommittee reports? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to the petitions. The first petition is from the Kemmer Sandwich Shop, 327 Westford Street, request for 8 spaces on Leroy Street lot. Motion to refer this matter to the manager for report and recommendation by Councilor Caulfield, second by Councilor Broderick. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The matter is referred to the manager. Next petition is from Arthur Marcotte, 537 School Street, requesting a handicap sign. Motion to refer the traffic engineer by Councilor Caulfield, second by Councilor Rita Mercier. All those in favor say aye. Any
Mr. Mayor,
opposed?
may I
Coun-
speak? May I
yes.
speak on that petition?
Okay, motion by Councilor Caulfield,
Yes.
second by Councilor Rita Mercier. Councilor Caulfield.
I called Mr. Marcotte's home and spoke to his daughter, and she indicated her father has a very serious heart condition, and matter of fact, the doctor almost recommended him not to leave the home unless he can park in front of his home. So I'm going to ask my colleagues, is there some way we could have a 60-day trial handicap parking sign put there? He does have a placard in his car, and this is a gentleman who's extremely sick, and we'd be doing that family a great justice if we did that.
Okay, so that's a motion to suspend the rules to entertain a 60-day trial on this request. Second by Councilor Broderick.
Thank
Any objection to suspension of the rules for that purpose? All right, all those in favor of suspending the rules say aye. Any opposed? The rules are suspended. Motion by Councilor Caulfield to adopt a 60-day trial, handicap parking at 537 School Street. Second by Councilor Broderick. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The 60-day order is adopted.
Thank you.
Moving to the motions. First motion is by Councilor Caulfield. City Council requests the city manager report on the status of the Stocklosa school issue. Second by Councilor Rita Mercier. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, we received this letter of communication from you December 5th indicating that the outside counsel received a fax from our solicitor, Christine O'Connor. And 7 months ago, I was certainly in favor of this resolve. I really was. Even though there was some who were reluctant, I was in favor of it. And as far as I could see, this is a win situation for the city. But correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the council froze that money, or the $1.1 million into an account. And I'm not going to belabor the issue. I just want to know, should a formal vote have been taken to release that money so you could have transacted this proposal? So, Solicitor Connor, if you could answer that, I appreciate it.
Madam Solicitor?
Sure. As we discussed, Counselor, it may very well be that you're correct, that a formal vote should have been taken to release those funds prior to, but as I explained to you last week, what happened in this particular case is that the insurance company, who had been more than patient with the city as we worked through this particular issue, had basically got to the point where they had given us an ultimate deadline, and at that point, the manager had consulted with the law department. He had requested of me, what steps does the council have to take in order to resolve this issue, and at that time, since typically the council doesn't necessarily vote on a settlement or anything of that nature, I had so advised the manager. But in retrospect, after you brought up that issue, I think that you're correct, and that I should have also had some sort of a vote on, or something from the manager indicating that there was an actual vote of the council taking steps to undo the vote. But again, that was clearly my error.
I just want to say that Attorney David Doneski agreed with your proposal, your draft of the entire situation. I'm just happy that it is over, and we're going to move on to address other issues at the school. I know that. So, but
Right, Council.
Mr. Manager?
Council, you're correct. The solicitor updated me and provided me with the background on this settlement, and I did have David Doneski, the attorney that did that reviewed this project for me. I wanted his advice as to, based upon his findings, and he did, as the letter indicates, came back and concurred with the solicitor that this was a good settlement for the city in terms of moving on with travelers. His report is completed, and I believe I've updated Councilor Donahue as the subcommittee chair on that.
And had we not gone after that proposal, we could have lost, everything went up and off the table. So this is a good win for the city, and I want to thank the solicitor and Mr. Doneski for more or less putting the stamp of approval on it. Thank you.
Councilor Donahue?
Thank you. Several months ago, you're correct, Council Caulfield, the matter was referred to the Stocklosa, or to the School Building Subcommittee, namely a motion that was filed by, I believe, Councilor Broderick to ask the Law Department to investigate whether we could recoup the $290,000 payment that had been made to Jackson, and whether there was whether it was right of set-off against monies being held that were owed to Jackson. And then, of course, we all know that Jackson walked off or left the job, and Travelers, the insurance company or the bond company, ended up stepping in its place to try and resolve this mess. We also asked for a report on that, and I believe you indicated last week or the week before, Mr. Manager, that Attorney Doneski's report was concluded, but that it was advisable that we get the report in executive session because of litigation. That's fine. I mean, based on the advice of counsel, and that's what the subcommittee has been waiting for, is for that report, be it from the law department or from outside counsel. In this case, outside counsel is the one who did the report in an investigation. So that said, I would ask that that report be given to the subcommittee in executive session. Now, it might be, I think, at this point, wise to have an executive session of the council as a whole, because it's a matter that, I mean, you know, I'm sure the subcommittee's happy to take it up, but it's received a lot of attention, and I think it's important for the council as a whole to hear the report and to understand why we've done what we've done, how we got there, and hear the full story. And in order to fully present it, I would ask that, I guess, number one, that it be presented in executive session, and the proper wording in the statute be done either at a meeting of the council, or whether it's a special meeting, I don't know, probably a meeting of a council. And then two, that it be at a time when Attorney Dineski could be present, because you know, questions may be raised, and I think, you know, since he did the investigation and the report, it is important that he be available to answer questions of the council. And so I don't know what his availability is, but it would seem to me if it could be on a Tuesday night when the council meets anyway, if we could arrange that, and then would take the proper steps to go into executive session. And again, just for the public, not that, I don't think anybody favors executive sessions. I'd love to talk about this in public, but there's ongoing litigation, and that's the purpose for the executive session, or so I'm told.
Councilor Armin Mercier?
I guess I'm a little confused on what part of the litigation that would be compromised by this report coming out publicly. Again, I'm saying that not having seen the report. I know that it's always cautious on the part of the law department to say, look, don't talk about this publicly because of litigation. Before I would vote to go into executive session, I would want to know exactly what part of this litigation would be compromised by this report being made public. So if we could have that before the vote is taken, I'd appreciate it. I know that there's certain sections of the law that you can quote as to what allows you to go into executive session, but I want it to be more than that. I want it to be because of certain things. I don't know what the litigation is all about. I know that executive session is something that's very controversial, and I want to make sure that if I do vote to go in executive session, that it's more than just this section of the law that says it, but there's some meat behind compromising the litigation that's pending, whatever that litigation is, because I'm not even aware of where the litigation is at or what's being litigated. So I just want to issue that caution.
That may,
Mr. Manager?
Counselor, if I may, that may be the best way to provide you with that information is to provide you with a report on where we are with litigation regarding this matter, and then
that will allow us to make our own individual
that will
decisions.
hopefully
Okay.
clarify.
That's fine. Well, I just don't want to hear a blanket, you know, based on this law, we can go into executive session. I want to know a little bit more than that.
So,
That
I
is
guess I'm
just a
hearing
suggestion
a couple
before it
different
comes out.
motions here, but one, if I can synthesize it, one is to get a report on the status of the present litigation, and the other is to get, I guess, a report on the status of the report.
Well, the matter that's been, I guess procedurally, the matter has been in subcommittee. We've been awaiting this report. And so I'm asking for the report to be brought forward, but rather than it being brought just to the subcommittee and then the subcommittee report to the council as a whole, that the report be brought to the council as a whole. And based on my understanding that the pending litigation, it would be advisable to do it in executive session. I would love to not do it in executive session, I can promise you that. However, you know, depending on advice of counsel.
Okay. So why don't we get a report from the manager as to the availability of the attorney who prepared the report, and in the meantime, we'll also get an update on the status of the litigation in connection with Councilor Mercier's request. Okay. All those in favor of those actions, say aye. Any opposed? And also a motion to approve the motion. I guess Councilor Caulfield's motion is approved in connection with that. Any requests for a roll call? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The motion is approved, as are these subsidiary requests. Next item is a motion by Councilor Elliott. The City Council requests the city manager report on the status of the Mass Mills development. second by Councilor Milonazo. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, can you tell me exactly, tell us exactly what the status of that development project is? I can remember a couple of years back that an appeal was filed on an objection, and we now have the Boot Mills, rehabbing their building. Lawrence Mills is now complete. That whole corridor, the arena, the ballpark, and then you get this big old eyesore coming around that bend after Hunts Falls Bridge. Where are we with that? Is there any progress? Has the market turned so that it's not going to happen? But it just seems that there's another big project that we should be doing if possible.
I agree, Councilor, and it has an impact. Obviously, it's a building that is in disrepair. It needs to be it'd be great if it could be renovated and put to productive use. It also has an impact upon our Riverwalk plans that go behind it. There are a variety of issues regarding the development of that final piece of the Mass Mill project. I'd feel more comfortable getting you a written report at your next meeting. Because
I think the important thing was
I have some knowledge of what's going on there, but obviously DPD has much more, and I'll get a report from them that I can forward on to you.
I think that'll be helpful to see what has transpired and where. I know there are historic issues. I know there are, so many other issues. But I think the important thing you said, it's sort of the final piece of that side of the river that would really complete.
There are historic issues. There are access issues. So that's the variety of parking, the variety of pieces of the puzzle here,
None of which we can't work on and overcome to complete it, but I'll look forward to that report. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? Motion's approved. Next motion by Councilor Elliott. City Council requests the city manager investigate the feasibility of installing windmills at the landfill for generating electricity. Second by Councilor Broderick. Councilor Elliott.
It's just an idea when we're looking at energy costs. Actually, Mr. Manager, I think when you responded on my idea to make it a snowboarding for the kids that didn't make it very far. I think you did mention it, and of course I see the number of windmills going, windmill farms throughout New England, Vermont, Maine, generating in one community, Mars Hill up in Maine, almost $500,000 a year in property taxes, reducing property taxes by close to 20%. Naturally, I thought it was something we should look into, and you alluded to it in your memo as well. I know the University of Massachusetts, it is in Amherst, they have the second largest turbine in the state, generally 250 kilowatts. I think the motion, at least, it speaks for itself. Maybe we can, work in conjunction with UMass Lowell to generate either revenue to reduce tax bills or to generate electricity. I know we spend close to $300,000 in the garages, $180 for City Hall just in electricity. Not to mention street lights. I want to say close to $800,000. TJ, is that so? I mean, I don't know if we can put 28 like they do, or 21 in some other sections of the city region, but they're in 20 states, so something we can look at. I don't know if it's high enough. Maybe it has a lot of obstacles, but just an idea to try to raise money and address one of those big, inflationary items in the budget and energy.
Should be sufficient wind coming in from Chelmsford to kind of turn those things around.
We hear from Councilor Ramirez and then the manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to support the motion. I've been on this council about 13 months, and this is Councilor Elliott's half a dozen time with an idea, and he's going to hit one of them. And, maybe National Grid will pay us not to put the windmills there, so I'm going to encourage him to continue with those ideas, and I'd like to see a report. Thank you.
Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I moved into that neighborhood 45 years ago. And when I moved there, there was a 30-foot ravine at the landfill. And the city filled that ravine up. And then a 40-foot mountain then followed it. there's a minimum of 50 to 60 feet of decaying trash with a membrane over it. So you would have to go down 50 to 60 feet to hit hard rock, pay dirt, to put in a foundation for one of these windmills. These windmills are enormous. I think the wingspan is 100 feet or so forth. I mean, Mr. Manager, you investigate the motion and see if it's feasible, but I don't see any hope for it because I don't know how you would put in a foundation to support these windmills. And even if you put in the foundation, how would you get it on the foundation? You'd have to bring it in with a helicopter. And that's not a foolish thing to say because they do that a lot. They put things on roofs with helicopters and so forth. You couldn't get a crane in there. So to put enough windmills at the landfill to generate enough electricity, it's, you know, I don't know, so.
Mr. Manager, do you, Councilor Rita Mercy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The premise of this motion is tremendous. I don't know if I want to support the landfill per se with the membrane and decay and trash. It's too bad because that would be a great spot, but I don't think it is because of that. But to say that it isn't a good idea, it's a tremendous idea. We need alternative energy sources. We need to think outside the box, and I think this motion does that. I think if we could perhaps look at Fort Hill up at the top, where we're not allowing any traffic to go up there. After an incident happened some years ago, we don't allow cars up there, people walk up there, but that's very high. And if the neighbors are listening, thinking, I don't want one of these in my backyard, I was at the Maritime Academy over at the Cape not too long ago, and you could stand 5 feet away from it and not hear a sound. These things are relatively quiet, so I support this motion. Probably not the place, but it's something that we could look into, so I wholeheartedly support the idea of this motion.
Thank you. Mr. Manager?
Councilor, just as a, we can, obviously, if the council votes this, we will move forward with this, but we already have started doing some preliminary work on this with Woodward and Curran, and we have some staff people that are familiar with some windmills that are down in Hull, which obviously has the benefit of being right there on the ocean. The advantage, from what I understand, isn't necessarily Chelmsford, but it is the proximity of Route 3 and that wide open space that it does create a bit of wind there. There is the issue, though, of the membrane. There is the issue of the methane that we're taking out of it right now, but it's certainly something that has some potential in the future, and perhaps the not too distant future. And if not right at the top of the landfill, there is some adjacent land that doesn't have any trash that may be high enough. So we can research all of those things.
Councilor Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all the motion was about. I don't know if it's feasible or not, but I can only imagine when this city was thought of as a place to generate hydroelectricity, people must have thought Mr. Lowell was, you know, probably not with it. So maybe Fort Hill's a better idea. I mean, at least it sparked a discussion, and you know, maybe there's some other locations, some higher, you know, higher spots that we can look at. But we put it forward and, you know, see what happens. We have, again, UMass right down the road. Maybe they, you know, they probably, I'm not an expert. I don't know about footings or foundations, but what I do know is that we need more money and we need to address our energy increases.
Thank you.
Thank
Councilor Rita Mercy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In conjunction with what that subject is all about, is it possible, Mr. Manager, that you could give us some information as to, are we receiving any revenue from the methane that is extracted from the landfill? Are we getting anything from that?
We are getting something from that, Councilor. I don't have a...
Could you give us some information
some
as
information.
to, I don't know, if it's $50 a year or whatever the price is, along with the fact that, are we selling sludge from the wastewater? Are we, as fertilizer or whatever, are we generating any money from that?
Yes, we are, Councilor.
Okay,
I'll
so
get
could
some...
we have some information about
Sure.
that? Because I find that fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why we can't hook something into hydropower with the river, which is a natural resource, and we can't generate any electricity from that? I don't understand. Running water, I don't know.
There are a couple of hydro plants in the city, but they're privately owned. But of course, all of that goes through the canals, and that's you have to direct it that way, and it goes.
So
to
they're
Boot Hydro.
generating money, but they can't clean up the debris that comes down, right? I don't get it.
Okay. All those in favor of the
Just,
motion,
I
say aye.
just have a clarification.
Counselor,
There's been a couple of suggestions to take a look at Fort Hill. Is this part of the study you're going to be bringing back to us? Or was that facetiously said?
Well, I don't know if that site in particular, but how about alternative?
Okay.
Yeah,
Any
if
location?
this site isn't feasible, other sites maybe.
Yeah, other sites.
Okay. All right. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Any opposed? Motion's approved. Next motion by Councilor Elliott. City Council requests the city manager contact DEP and report on the status of the consent decree relative to the installation of auxiliary power units for diesel trains in the Moore Street area. Second by Councilor Caulfield. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In my quest, or our quest to try to have Pan Am come in compliance or work with the city, or at least pay attention, I did do some investigating, if you will, through EPA, our air program. Come to learn that this authority to allow the running of diesel trains is delegated to the Department of Environmental Protection. And, excuse me, apparently some time back, Mr. Manager, there was a consent decree entered into, I believe it was as a result of the litigation that Chelmsford and other communities filed, to have Guilford Rail at the time, now Pan Am, install APUs, auxiliary power units. Can we find out where we are at with that? Because that was a number of years ago, and there was a time frame associated with them outfitting or retrofitting these diesel trains. So when they are idle, and the law, by the way, for the people living in South Lowell watching, if the law is 30 minutes. Diesel buses is 5 minutes, but the law is 30 minutes for diesel trains. And I think we had people in here, residents, saying they've been idling for days. So again, of course, it's enforcement, and if people do see them, they need to contact, according to EPA folks and DEP, that they need to contact, and so we need to. How do you say, put together at least sort of an argument and track it. So that's the motion, Mr. Manager. If you can look into it, most of these trains should be, they should be close to at least being outfitted. I suspect they're probably not, and that's, well, I don't want to expose us to any litigation, but the thought is that they have not done this in the time frame that they should have, and that might be the leverage for us to get, to have them stop leaving them in the neighborhoods and, idling for so long.
Thank you. Mr. Manager.
Council, I can get you a written report on that. I'm very familiar with that. I think I've actually mentioned that at a couple of council meetings where we've talked about some of the railroad issues that we've had here. Actually, the consent order came in, I believe, August of this past year, just as I was leaving Chelmsford. And essentially, it was litigation brought by the town of Chelmsford and followed up by the towns of Westford and Andover, a couple of other communities kind of jumped in which we tried to, or the town tried to enforce the DEP regulations. And that was quickly met by a filing by Guilford in federal court seeking an injunction. That sort of dragged out there in for a couple of years. Ultimately, Guilford's agreed to enter into this agreement with the state and the communities involved to drop all litigation, with the understanding that they would move forward over, I believe, a 3 or 4 year period to retrofit all of their trains with these APUs. But I'll get you more detail on that. I've actually asked Frank Singleton to pull together some information from the Chelmsford files that they've provided to the city.
Apparently, they're quite the company. In 10 years, the Federal Railroad Administration has fined them. They have 71 violations, and they've only paid barely 57% of their fines, and the fines of and almost 500,000, 482,500. So, again, I can recall at the subcommittee meeting, Congressman Meehan and I think Council Donahue saying that the best way to do it is embarrass them and try to have them work with us, because they just are not a good company, and they don't work with communities. But the people in South Lowell that have to tolerate this day in, day out, it's just not right. So appreciate you following up on that, Mr. Manager.
Councilor Rita Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A month ago, I made the motion regarding Pan Am to please cease and desist and have someone go down there behind Moore Street, because the trains were running for 4 days. That's unacceptable. If the law says 30 minutes, even so, but the noise and the emissions, and it was a relatively good week, and that's the week that people were trying to open their windows and couldn't even do it. So, I mean, I thought that conjunction of cities together put a thing together to have EPA tell them to put some emission control on their exhausts or whatever.
Mr. Manager.
Councilor, we have been monitoring that situation. I understand Councilor Elliott mentioned the half hour. I believe that's the state regulation. Of course, the railroad insists, and hence it ended up in federal court, that they don't have to abide by the state regulation. And their agreement now with the state to avoid any type of enforcement action there is that they're moving forward with the installation of these units on their trains. The federal requirement is 48 hours. But again, we're following up on that, because we heard the same thing about the 4-day period in which the trains were idling out there. Unfortunately, we weren't notified of that by any of the residents, so that we could take some action during that period of time. We heard it after the fact. So, it's important that the residents notify us when something like that is happening. But we are moving forward too. Councilor Donahue had asked that we work with Congressman Meehan's office and Senator Kennedy's office. We are working with them in conjunction with Middlesex Community College to pull together a number of communities to bring pressure on the railroad and bring pressure on, our legislators to take some type of action to, prevent this in its entirety, as well as the other issue of the hazardous materials that they're bringing through the city and just parking in people's backyards.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
Councilor Donahue.
Thank you. Yeah, in that vein, Mr. Manager, if we do get a date for that, if we can know in advance, so we can let all the people, certainly, I know we're trying to get other communities to that meeting, and as well as Mr. Fink, but if we can, and that's really his name, Mr. Fink, but if we can, so we can let the neighborhood know. I've gotten some calls and contacts to just inquiring where we stood, so we can let everybody know in the neighborhood when that might happen.
We will try to get a report for you on with an approximate date for the next council meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? The motion's approved. Next motion by Councilor Elliott. City Council requests the city manager and the wastewater treatment facility director report on odor remediation study and improvements. Second by Councilor Ramirez. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, can you tell me, I know it's January and everyone has their windows closed. Summer will soon be upon us. I know that, just wait a second. I know that Mark Young and the treatment plant, they contracted to do a study last year during the peak season to identify, the problem and how to remediate it. Can you give us an update as to where that study is and what the conclusions were and what the next step is?
Let me get to Council, if I may. I'll get you a written report on that. I do know that that project is out to bid right now to do the necessary design work and then move forward with the repairs.
That's good news.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'll look forward to the report.
All those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? The motion's approved. Next motion by Councilor Milanazzo. City Council requests the city manager report on the purchase of 319 Wilder Street by the Justice Resource Institute, Inc. Second by Councilor Armin Mercier. Councilor Milonazo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, I was going through the Registry of Deed filings last week and came across this filing that 319 Wilder Street was purchased by Justice Resource Institute, Inc. for, I think it was $740,000. And I'm concerned, number one, what that actually entity is, if it's a nonprofit, if it's taking another piece of property off the tax rolls. So if you could look into that, Mr. Manager, and report back, I'd be curious as to, because it is in a residential neighborhood, so I'd be concerned with what use that Justice Resource Institute is actually working at 319 Wilder Street.
Okay. Anything further? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? The motion's approved. Next motion by Councilor Rita Mercier. City Council requests the city manager have the law department draw a proper vote to name the corner of 17th Street and Humphrey Street for Arthur Bonin. Second by Councilor Caulfield. Councilor Rita Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion speaks for itself. I will speak further on it when it's brought back by the city manager. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? The motion's approved. Next motion by Councilor Broderick. City Council requests the city auditor perform a complete review of the Stocklosa School project. Second by Councilor Milonazo. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Madam Auditor, this is self-explanatory, but a little bit of history. I was hoping you could put, I don't know when you can do this, how long it will take. I'm sure you get your hands full. But it's my understanding you have several school audits going on. So whenever you finish, if you could let us know and we could maybe get to it. But essentially, what it is, we came up last week to talk about building 2 more new schools and how much it would cost and so on. It kind of dawned on me, I don't know if anybody knows how much we paid for the last one. I know what we bonded and so on, but when I met with DOR, there was talk of funds being used from other accounts and things not being included or reconciled, for lack of proper auditing terms here. And if you could please give us a full report. We've got a legal report, but I was holding off till you started to ask for this for the school from the finance side. One of the things that kind of surprised me was we bonded in September of '04, the council did, for an additional $1 million, settled it for $290, and then we were told by the former auditor that the other $710 was for furniture. So was that not included in the original price and bond and so on? What we're going to do for furniture, I don't know, maybe the Butler School. But basically, it's just from start to finish, from the remediation and trucking out, I know was delayed, and how much did we actually pay for that and so on. But if you could let us know when you have that ready. Thank you.
Councilor Donahue.
Thank you. To add to the list, Madam Auditor, if you could also give us a report on what has been disallowed on some of the school building projects by the state. This came up at a subcommittee meeting some weeks ago, and it was actually the first I had heard about it, that there were a number of things, significant monies that were disallowed by the state during the audits. And so we've been operating under this impression that all the schools are 90, we got 90% reimbursement, and the numbers that were being thrown around that night at the subcommittee, we didn't. And so, and some of them were challenged, I guess, and where we stand on the challenges, but not all of them were. And I don't know why. I mean, as I said, it was the first I heard about it over at the school department. So if we could get an update on that, and hopefully there aren't too many disallowed costs on the current audits that are going on, but.
Exactly. You'll be happy to hear that I had the auditors in last week that are doing the audit on this school. What I'm doing is reconstructing all the activity, finding out what was financed where, and I'm also doing the Pine, the high school, and the library. So as I finish these schools, I'll give you a complete report on everything. So I'm sure that'll be helpful to all of you.
Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the Stocklosa School, the school department never budgeted for furniture. They didn't put in a budget for furniture. That's why that money was spent for that furniture.
All those, Councilor Elliott.
I just briefly, this is a good motion because I don't think we ever got a clear understanding on the additional 290,000. Bids came in for 17,095, if I remember correctly, and that's what we bid on, and that's what we should have got, and that should have been the end of it. Have you gotten to the point where you're crosswalking? I think there were 68 invoices, 68 requests for payments.
I'm pulling every single invoice and copying every single invoice, every change order. So by the time I'm through, we'll have everything.
There are a number, and this is probably a long discussion that will probably come out either at a subcommittee meeting or an executive session, but all the change orders you had, they're all executed appropriately, and, well, I guess I'm asking you questions that you'll be able to answer once the report is complete. So I would love to get straight answers that we have not gotten up to this point, and I still maintain that we should not have paid that 290. I don't know how the 290 came about, if there were some overruns that should have been reduced otherwise, but it is very frustrating, and I understand that the independent, counsel that came forward, that was an answer on how to best resolve the situation. I don't think that the city should have paid that money, and I think we took it on the chin, and we just shouldn't have paid for it. So, maybe your report will show us what we paid for and what we actually got, because that's where the disconnect is. So I look forward to the report. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion? Oh, sorry, Councilor Rita Mercer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion asks for a complete review of the Stocklosa School project, and having talked like that, this is my feeling about the Stocklosa School and future schools that are going to be developed on, if they are. It is my understanding that the Stocklosa School, and it's already built, so that we can't really be saying we got to redo something, but we can look at what we've done in the past with the Stocklosa School and hope that in the future things change a bit. And by saying that, I mean we have an auditorium at the Stocklosa School. It's a state-of-the-art facility, so much so that it should be in comparison to the greatness of Carnegie Hall. And having said that, it's like if anything breaks there, we can't have a person that is a maintenance man at the school go and take a look at it and repair it. It is so complicated and convoluted and so confusing that we now have to go back to the original contractor that put it in and come in and use all that money for this state-of-the-art contraption that nobody has any idea about simple maintenance. And having said that, we have an HVAC system that if it goes on the fritz, we can't have that same type of a maintenance janitor, custodian, whatever you want to call this person, go in and take a look at the HVAC and be that all-around person to do the repairs. We then need to have a professional come in and relook at the whole thing. I mean, what I'm trying to say is, can we possibly build a state-of-the-art school that we can maintain ourselves without going into getting a college professor that could, work the system and make it work? I mean, why is it that we have special drainage at a lab for chemicals that we don't even have a chemical class in there? I mean, why did we spend all this extra money on stuff that is so needless when we could have a basic, state-of-the-art, beautiful facility that anybody that's a maintenance person could go in and fix? And I think this is a mistake that has happened before. It's there. What can we do about it? Let's not make this same mistake again. That is my feeling. I mean, I want our children to learn, but spending all this money on unnecessary things that are mind-boggling. That's my message for reviewing what's there, and let's not duplicate that again.
Councilor Donahue.
Thank you. Just briefly, in the joint subcommittee, the school building subcommittee, Councilor Mercier, between the school subcommittee and this council's on the school building projects, over and over, we've asked the architects and the designers those very questions, and have been assured that the systems, including those in the auditorium, and I know Councilor Caulfield, who's a member of the subcommittee, has stressed to the architects that, you know, the frills are not to be included in these schools. And we've been assured over and over that that's not the case, from, you know, not having fancy windows or walls or tile or all these things that may be nice, but they're very costly, to the mechanicals and the systems in terms of operation, from not only functioning but operational. These schools, as designed, would, if they are built, will be very functional, very attractive schools, but there will be no frills, and we've been assured that over and over again. But it has been a priority in the subcommittee. I just wanted to report that.
Thank you. Councilor Broderick?
I think that's a good point. I think we do need to learn from those mistakes and how much we spend. But the point of this motion really is how much did we spend, and because I think we need to look at where the money came from. I've heard that money was spent from the acre renewal plan that we get from the state revolving fund or whatever it is, and that concerns me. So that's what I would look forward to. Obviously, the two that are in the pipeline are a concern in terms of how much we spend, but this one is a look back as to how much did we actually spend, because I don't think we really know for sure. Thank you.
Councilor Armin Mercia?
I just want to chime in a little bit on what Councilor Eileen Donoghue said about the subcommittee. The design review team, whoever that is are the people responsible to see to it that we design a school that's functional, but it's not a Taj Mahal. A lot of the contracting problems comes from a bad design, or a design that someone thought should have been put into the school, and a contractor only ends up building what is designed. So when the design team and the architect get together and they come up with a plan, a final plan they're going to put out to bid, it's terribly important, and that's the only place that you can find out if the design is proper or is not proper. So the design review team, whoever that is, I think has a responsibility to make sure that these things do not take place, that things are not in there that shouldn't be in there, that escalates the cost, and causes a lot of problems that we have during construction and at the end. So that design team is terribly important, I think, to make sure that we get a good school, but at the same time a school that's functional and not necessarily a Taj Mahal.
Councilor, I can speak to that a little bit. I mean, the state has imposed some new requirements on us, including having an independent project manager who now is responsible for that, part of that oversight. And I can tell you, as part of that review, all of our employees, for example, Councilor Rita Mercier talked about maintenance and things like that. Well, all of our DPW maintenance people have had an opportunity to comment on these designs. In fact, they've toured other schools of similar design built by these same architects. So I think, I wasn't involved in the other ones, but I can tell you from what I've seen, there is a very thorough, multi-layered levels of review.
That's very important
in these projects.
That's very important right up front.
Okay. Councilor Elliott?
No, you said it well, Mayor. I just wanted to, respond to that. That's exactly what we're doing. We hired an independent project engineer to look at, to make sure that what we need is what we're putting in and nothing more. And then there are some requirements under SBA to, that classroom space and things like that. So the mayor really answered what I was going to say.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Any opposed? Motion's approved. The next motion is by Councilor Broderick. City Council requests the city manager meet the Cable TV Subcommittee and the city clerk relative to televising of subcommittee meetings. Second by Councilor Ramirez. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The council passed, I think it was last year, a vote to televise subcommittee meetings, and it seems like one after another there's an issue of scheduling, or it's in the mayor's reception room, and I just thought it'd be a good idea once and for all to have probably a quick meeting, as most of us have. I was on that show in LTC recently, and bumped into Mr. Haig and had a discussion with him. He can provide us a schedule of what's available, and I thought it would be a good idea if we just nail it down as to who's responsible for what kind of notice we need, and then we can establish how to get it done so that they're televised. That's pretty straightforward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Caulfield.
Mr. Mayor, I'm the chairman of the Cable Subcommittee. We'll have a meeting next Tuesday at 5:30. But very briefly, if the chairperson of a subcommittee doesn't notify the clerk that you want the meeting televised, then no one calls LTC. And that's the problem. Or if someone in the clerk's office forgets to notify LTC. So I think what has to happen is a copy of the meeting should be sent to LTC when there's a meeting, so they will know in writing, there's a meeting Monday night, City Hall, or Wednesday night, or whatever. And I think that's the format you have to go by, because word of mouth is not doing the job, so.
Okay. All those in favor of the Councilor Elliott?
But how about an email, Mr. Clerk, and if somebody over there that does the scheduling, that when someone calls a meeting and...
Well, I think that's the purpose of the motion, right? To find out the best way and
Yeah,
so to
just
make sure
whatever it
that-
is, whether it's CCs on emails or, phone calls or whatever, but at least everybody
right.
knows.
And I think it's important that until they're able to wire the mayor's reception room, the subcommittee meeting should be held here. That's what should happen, as long as subcommittees meet over there, it's not gonna be televised. I think we have to understand that, so we've gotta schedule not only notifying them, but making sure that our subcommittee meetings are here.
Right.
At least those that we want televised.
And, there are some competing times for this
Right.
room now with the Board of Appeals and the Planning Board, the License Commission, so it's going to take some effort to
Right.
get that done.
Okay.
Councilor Rita Mercia?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think our city clerk could shed some light on this issue as far as scheduling for subcommittee meetings.
In the last meeting with LTC, myself, the manager, Dave Fenton, and Christine O'Connor, I think, were also at the meeting. LTC indicated that if the council were to pick a particular day and a time slot that they wanted to have their meetings, then it would make it much easier for them to provide coverage. However, as the mayor mentioned, this room has other meetings on different evenings. The only night that really made any sense was a Tuesday night that LTC could make available from 4 until 6:30, to have television coverage, and then you could schedule your meetings as such. The meetings on other evenings, you're going to compete with the other boards and commissions and with LTC's availability.
I think he indicated that there may be a couple more available dates, so I think it should be something that can be fairly straightforward and uncomplicated to nail it down.
Okay. Councilor Milonazo?
Thank you. The problem that we have, Mr. Mayor, as I see it, is that we have so many competing subcommittees. I wanted to actually have a subcommittee next Tuesday at 5:30 to go over the rules issue. Now, I just heard Councilor Caulfield say we'll have an LTC meeting, which is fine, for 5:30. So I think that some of my colleagues who are on both now can't participate in the Rules Committee. So maybe we'll end up moving the Rules Committee to the following week. But I heard the city manager say that they were going to do a zoning presentation on the 13th. So again, it's just hard to juggle all of the subcommittee meetings. So we're probably going to have to go off a Tuesday night. Maybe to a Wednesday. I know the school committee does meet on Wednesday, but we may have to go off a Tuesday night to some other night in order to accommodate all of these subcommittees. So we'll have to just work through the clerk's office.
Either that or the mayor wipe out half the subcommittees.
Okay. At 5, okay.
You only get so many meetings.
Councilor Donahue?
I don't know about Mr. Hague, but I know when we brought this up once before, we were told Thursday nights, the council chamber's not used. I guess it's kind of getting ourselves trained to saying Tuesday and Thursday if you want televised and just kind of shooting for those 2 days. It's very difficult to only be on one day. There are too many subcommittee meetings to be limited to one day. You'd wait 6 months to get a Tuesday subcommittee, really. So if we can try and shoot for those two, time slots, then I think it may work.
Thursday was one of the dates that he had mentioned and we had discussed. However, Thursdays, you have License Commission meetings at 3 o'clock. If they were to run over their 2 hours or 1 hour, whatever it is, then you would be competing with them. Also, Board of Appeals and planning boards, when Monday is a holiday, they meet on Thursday evening. So you're going to have that to juggle with as well. It's just, we did this probably 10 years ago. And the same issues happened back then that are happening today. It's trying to schedule get all the people together.
We just need to wire the mayor's reception room. That's all there is to it.
I don't have the authority to tell them to do that.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? The motion's approved. And I'm sure you'll work this all out at your meeting next week, Councilor Broderick. Next motion by Councilor Broderick, City Council requests the city manager explain the structure of the financing for the gym, planned garage. Second by Councilor Caulfield. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Manager, maybe to the CFO. But, you know, we've all heard a lot of questioning and different numbers thrown out in terms of, was the bonds done right? And, you know, that we're paying too much interest up front and what the deal is. So I just thought it'd be a good idea if we get the actual information out there so people know how we did it and why. I mean, I know we have bond counsel and we follow recommendations so that we don't just take whatever we can find. If you could just maybe explain what the whole setup is with the bonds.
Actually, Mr. Moses has a spreadsheet for you that will explain, or at least detail out all of the costs, and he can walk you through the actual way it was structured. I think one of the issues that has come up is, while he's handing those out, is that this project was a little bit different than most projects that the city does, because this one required that there be some taxable bonds. Most of our bonds are tax exempt, but because there's a private lease that will go for the bottom floor, where we anticipate that there'll be a restaurant, the requirement is that those be issued in a taxable basis. So the deal had to be structured a little bit differently in order to have it be least expensive to the city. And I'll have Tom walk you through that.
Right. Actually, the first concept to walk through is that there are a combination of taxable and tax-exempt bonds. As the manager said, leasing a facility to retail operations is not a tax-exempt activity, so it can't be financed through tax-exempt bonds. In addition, when certain parking spaces are set aside to be leased to either businesses or residents and not available to the general public, to anybody who comes in and parks, that's a private purpose, and that also is not financeable through tax-exempt bonds. In this particular case, the bond counsel and the DPD went through the structure of the building and determined the square footage of public purpose space and the square footage of private purpose space, and the financing was allocated proportionally. So therefore you have almost 50-50 public and tax-exempt bonds and taxable bonds. Now, three things with regard to the bonds. I'd like to take a little credit for structuring this, but I can't because I wasn't here. They actually did a great job. These bonds taken together are 20 years of roughly equal amortization, about $2 million a year, a little more than $2 million a year. They did that intentionally, and that was to create a stable debt service for the garage operations so that the city could hold its rates stable during the course of the 20-year bond life. The second thing that happened is taxable bonds carry a higher interest rate than tax-free bonds. They structured the bond amortization so that the taxable bonds were paid off first. So the higher interest rate was paid off first, and the tax-exempt bonds, the lower interest rate, was carried on longer. So that had the effect of minimizing the interest rate that the city paid. The last thing that happened was the first 2 years of the bond financing were actually deferred principal. There were no principal payments. Those are the construction years of the garage, so we were not required to raise the capital to pay the principal off during the construction period. So this is well thought out. And if you have any specific questions about the financing, I'll answer them.
I have a suggestion that maybe we should forward this to Jim Sullivan and maybe put it on our webpage so people will really clearly understand how this is being financed and that how creative it is and how good it is for the city. And I really appreciate the presentation, and I hope that the people who are watching this television program tonight can understand that we are doing the right thing as it relates to financing this garage. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. It'd be helpful to have a narrative piece to explain that as well. Councilor Broderick?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moses. I appreciate that. Because we've all heard a number of stories about how we botched the financing and we're paying interest and no principal and we're going to bankrupt the city and whatnot. But I was hoping you were going to say that it's similar to a construction loan where you pay interest and then when you're done, you've borrowed all the money, now you make your payments, get rid of the principal. And thank you for the explanation. It is, as you said, I think it's a nice piece of financing and it was done, a good job was done. Thank you.
Thanks. Councilor Rita Mercer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Also on this issue of the jam plan, there was talk about who's the clerk of the works? Is this a certified person? What's the story with this individual? I don't have the information with me here right this moment. I had it in past council meetings, but since we're on this topic, I did take liberty to call DPD to find out that information. We do have a man on board who is top-notch. There is no law that requires the person to be certified as a clerk of the works. However, this man goes beyond the bounds of being a civil engineer, you name it. This guy has all the certifications to be the person that should be the best to be overseeing this project. I know that. I don't have his name. I thought it was Robert, and I'm not sure of his name. But be that as it may, it's not that they're creating and building a garage, and we just don't know anything about it. There is a man overseeing the whole construction of this jam garage, and he is more than a so-called clerk of the works. I want you to know that.
Yep. Councilor Milanazzo?
And I feel confident in him.
Councilor Milanazzo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I recall when I voted to support the garage financing, Mr. Carney, our parking director, actually stood at the microphone and talked about how for the first 2 or 3 years we would be able to pay for the bonding through the receipts from the garage. What I would also like, in addition to this very good detailed report, is to actually see if that's holding true and to also look at the other garages, because as I go to the other garages throughout the downtown, I'm actually told by some customers that the garages, as an example, on Market Street, a lot of times that garage is full during the course of a day. They have to go to John Street or they have to go to another garage. So I'm thinking now that our garages seem to be working very well, getting a lot of good reports back from customers of those garages. And where are those bonds in relation to retiring those bonds, and again, in relationship to this 20-year schedule? So again, the reason that I voted for the financing back last year was because I was convinced that Mr. Carney had a good plan working with the administration to make sure that this could be paid for.
Thank you. Councilor Caulfield?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I asked the maker of the motion, Councilor Broderick, if he would mind if I attach to the motion for the clerk of the works, and I agree with Councilor Mercier, the clerk of the works report on the construction integrity that's been done so far on the garage, and to let us know if there's any outstanding faults before they continue to construct the project. So, thank you.
Councilor Donahue?
Yeah, just 2 quick points. One, Mr. Moses, it's probably obvious to you, but for some of us isn't, but when you're talking about tax exempt and taxable bonds, that's because the Internal Revenue Service requires it that way, right? So,
That's correct.
we all live by, the IRS makes the rules, and that's just the way it has to be. Not because we chose that kind, but we're mandated by the Internal Revenue Service to put the bonds together that way. And then if we can be kept up to date on, for instance, when it's appropriate, whether we have a prospective tenant and so forth, or what the plans are through DPD or through your office, Mr. Manager. I think as we get closer to completion, that's going to be helpful for the council to know, whether there's a tenant that's likely to come on board, so that we can see some of those revenues. Because your spreadsheet that you just gave us doesn't show the revenue, does it? In other words, so let's say you get a first floor tenant, that $2 million will be offset in part by not just garage fees, but the rental from a retail tenant, right? All right. So if we can be kept in the loop, if there's, a deal at hand or so forth.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott?
I agree with Councilor Donahue and the motion to get a projection or forecast on revenue, because I didn't support this because, if I remember correctly, surplus money currently in the parking revolving fund, it's not an enterprise fund, the revolving fund could not sustain this 20-year note, and that was my concern. That still is my concern. And actually the recommendation from Manager Cox at the time were to increase the rates, and there was not a willingness to do that, and I agree. So how are we still going to pay for it? And this is good to know, and I didn't know about taxable versus non-taxable bonds, and there were some questions on why are we paying all this interest up front, and it was a very informative explanation, which makes all the sense in the world. But the flip side is, how are we going to pay for it? And I still don't know to this date. I believe 2010 was the date that fund was going to start running a deficit, which was not what the purpose of increasing those rates were, as well as, and I don't know, and this is, it's part of the whole financing, what about other capital improvements that I believe we took bonds out a couple of years ago, particularly at the Market Street and other I know there was other capital improvements that we went out on a long-term note, and that was also going to be paid from those receipts. So a lot of comments, but still, all comes down to where is the money coming from.
Mr. Manager?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, just respond to a few of the comments that have been made. I think that Mr. Moses described it well. The financing that was structured on this is the right way to do it. It was we had the best expertise with our bond counsel of Palmer and Dodge, as well as our financial advisors, First Southwest, and Mr. Carney, working on this in August to structure this in such a way that it was doable. And I think that it has had some scrutiny of late, or some questions raised of late, but as you can see, it does make sense in terms of being able to manage it effectively for the least cost for the city, and be done in a way that is sustainable with the rates that we charge. We will work to get you an update on the construction of the project, as well as the condition of the work that's been done, and any information that we have as we move forward trying to lease up that space. We were waiting, obviously, for something to really get into the ground. We've done to really push for a tenant to move into that space, so we will be doing that. But there is a larger issue here that I believe Councilor Elliott raised earlier in a motion that about a month and a half, 2 months ago, and Councilor Donahue had a similar motion that we are working on continually, and that is, as it relates to the enterprise, putting the parking garages on an enterprise, and also how the financing and the revenue stream is going to work with the Jam Plan garage. And we're looking at that as really all of our garages, is how this is all coming together to ensure that everything can pay for itself, and that there isn't a drain on the city taxes in order to make this work. So those reports should be coming to you, I would say, within the next month to a month and a half, so that we can take a look at that for you.
Thank you. Councilor Broderick?
Just real briefly, could you also give us an update? I think we saw something in the paper about Middlesex, a new contract. I don't mean tonight, but when you've got that.
We hope to wrap that up within the next week or so, and I'll be happy to get you a report on that as well.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion, say aye. Any opposed, the motion's approved. Motion to adjourn by Councilor Armin Mercia, seconded by Councilor Milonazo. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed, meeting stands adjourned.
We need to put a clock up there so I can see.